One Piece has a lot of episodes, some are better than others, but there's one in particular that stands out. Episode 227, which comes right after the infamous Foxy arc, is an episode with one of the greatest character introductions in One Piece. And in this video, we'll be discussing the events in this episode and how they massively improved One Piece's world building. In the first part of this video, we'll discuss why this episode improved One Piece, and in the second part, we'll analyze the episode itself. As always, this is your spoiler warning, so if you've just started watching One Piece, then I'd recommend you catch up to these episodes before you watch the rest of the video. With that out of the way, let's start. There's over 1,000 One Piece episodes, so why did this one improve One Piece's world building so much? To answer that, we'll have to look at the world of One Piece up until this point. One Piece has always had some of the best world building in any series, with each island having its own unique history, characters, and settings. What's most interesting though is the overarching world building aspects, such as the world government, the Void Sentry, and most importantly, the Navy. All these topics are mentioned from time to time throughout the series, but in early One Piece, we were never actually shown the bigger picture, and a lot was still unknown. For example, the Navy. They've been there from the very start, but we knew almost nothing about them for hundreds of episodes. The most powerful Marines we'd seen were Smoker, and a few others here and there, but there was never a clear hierarchy of power, and the Navy leaders were shrouded in mystery. That all changed in episode 227, when we finally met one of the most powerful Marines in the world, Admiral Aokiji. Aokiji's introduction fleshed out the power scaling in One Piece. Whereas before we only had the warlords, we now had admirals as well for a new tier of power. This episode introduced us to the highest officers in the Navy, and from this point onwards, each Marine rank became associated with a certain power level. For example, you could say that a character is Admiral level or Vice Admiral level, if you want to say that they have a certain amount of power. This wasn't possible in early One Piece with what little information we had about the Navy. Up until this point, it was certain characters that were powerful on their own rather than because of their Marine rank. For example, both Nezumi and Smoker were Marine captains in the East Blue, but their power levels were so extremely far off from each other that their ranks didn't really indicate much about them. It just showed that they were both in positions of authority. Nezumi didn't even have combat skills but was still a captain, while Smoker had a Logia type Devil Fruit and took down Luffy with ease. Even other captains like Axe-Hand Morgan were nowhere near the same level as Smoker. There was a huge imbalance on how strong characters were because power scaling wasn't fleshed out yet. The strength of the admirals that was shown in episode 227 made it clear that leaders in One Piece were mostly based on physical power rather than anything else. This episode showed us that those in high positions need to be physically stronger than those who serve them. For example, just like each pirate captain is the strongest on a ship, the admirals are the strongest fighters in the Navy, and this applies everywhere else in One Piece. Each of the 4 emperors is the strongest person in their territory, and even Akainu and Aokiji agreed that whoever was the strongest would become fleet admiral, rather than put it to a vote. There are some exceptions of course, but in almost every instance of leadership in One Piece, the leader of a group is the strongest one there. It would be like if leaders in real life were the strongest people in each country. That's a topic for another time, but it's interesting to point out how much physical strength affects the rank of each person in One Piece. Once admirals were introduced and a clear hierarchy was established, we could now tell which characters were more powerful just by looking at their rank. We could expect a vice admiral to be more powerful than a captain, and an admiral to be more powerful than a vice admiral. This made the Navy seem much more organized than it previously was, and it fleshed out each individual rank by making them signify a certain power level, rather than just a position of authority. The lower the rank, the weaker the character, all the way from the lowest ranks who are just cannon fodder to the powerhouses of the world government. The only exception to this system is Garp, who's far more powerful than any other vice admiral, but that's only because he keeps refusing to be promoted rather than him not being on an admiral's level. The way this episode portrayed the admirals really sold the idea that they were more powerful than any other character we'd seen before. The fact that Aokiji didn't even care about a pirate with a 100 million berry bounty is an indication of how powerful the Navy actually is. This episode made us realize that even after 200 episodes, Luffy was still insignificant in the grand scheme of things. By only following Luffy's journey, it was easy for us to forget about the sheer size of the One Piece world. There were countless pirates out there, and Luffy was still a rookie with a crew where half the members didn't even have bounties yet. He wasn't even classified as dangerous enough for an admiral to care about him yet. Aokiji not caring about catching Luffy implies that there are incredibly powerful pirates out there, who the admirals are focused on catching and are worth their time. Admirals are the pinnacle of the Navy's strength, and only have time to deal with the most serious situations. For example, some of the only times an admiral was called into action was when Luffy punched a celestial dragon hundreds of episodes later, and during the war in Marineford. In episode 227, Luffy was still too weak to pose any actual threat to the admirals. The world building in this one episode is phenomenal, because up until this point we've never seen a marine so powerful that they don't even care about a pirate with such a high bounty. After this episode, we finally saw the bigger picture. There was now a clear hierarchy in the navy, and each marine rank made more sense. Even if we wouldn't see another admiral for a long time, this episode paved the way for some of the strongest characters to appear in the series later on. Also, this episode is partially responsible for all the power scaling debates that you can find all over the internet, where if you have an opinion on how strong admiral level is, you'll get a real life bounty on your head. Now, onto the analysis of the episode. Episode 227 starts with the crew meeting a stranger on an island. This was the same person we saw riding a bike across the ocean a few episodes prior, so he's already an interesting character. At first, the crew is confused as to who he is, because he's alone on the island and sleeping while standing up. While the rest of the crew is confused, immediately as Robin sees him, she falls to the ground in shock, and explains that this man is a Navy admiral. Robin's reaction is unexpected, because since she joined the crew, she's always had a very calm demeanor, so for her to get so freaked out about seeing one person puts us on alert that he's extremely dangerous. We don't even need Robin to explain that Aokiji is one of the strongest marines, because we can already tell just by her reaction to seeing him that he's incredibly powerful. We then see the silhouettes of the three admirals. The thing that's great about this scene is that it builds anticipation to see who these other powerful figures are, and even though they won't be shown for a long time, it's something in the background that keeps us watching and excited about. This is something most other series can't do because of how short they are, and this really sets One Piece apart from other anime and manga, which is how the quality of the story keeps up as time goes on. The episode continues with Aokiji asking Nami out on a date, and then he explains that he came to see Robin and isn't interested in catching Luffy and his crew. It's unexpected to see a marine not care about a pirate with such a high bounty, and it's unsettling in a way, because it implies that the sheer power of Aokiji is enough to easily kill Luffy's entire crew if he felt like it. When you compare that to other strong marines like Smoker who are desperately chasing Luffy, it's disturbing how different the power level must be between Aokiji and Luffy. Luffy doesn't believe what Aokiji is saying, and he thinks that Aokiji wants to take Robin. Luffy tries to attack him, and the others hold him back and warn him about how powerful Aokiji is. Before anything can happen, they get interrupted by a group of castaways who were stranded on the island. As the Straw Hats help them, Aokiji says that he can bring the castaways to a nearby island. Chopper points out that there are no ships to leave the island they're on, and Robin says that Aokiji can make it happen. The next scene is one of the best examples of how powerful the admirals are. Aokiji and the rest of the group go to the island shore, where he dips his hand in the water. He then freezes the entire ocean and makes a path leading to another island, which he says will stay frozen for a whole week. After the castaways leave, Aokiji tells Luffy that he's just like his grandpa. This was the first mention of any of Luffy's family members other than Ace, and it was unexpected because he came from an admiral. It foreshadows that his grandpa must be strong if Aokiji was helped out by him. After that, Aokiji tells the crew that Robin will bring them trouble, and he starts talking about her past, to which Robin gets angry and attacks him. Aokiji doesn't look the least bit concerned, and he said he wasn't planning on killing her, but now she provoked him. As Aokiji's about to attack, immediately Zoro, Sanji, and Luffy all defend her and fight back. This does nothing though, because Aokiji instantly stops all three of them without breaking a sweat. He then turns to Robin and completely freezes her. Luffy tells the rest of the crew to take Robin and run back to the ship, while he fights Aokiji. As the rest of the crew recovers on the ship, we cut back to Luffy and Aokiji, where Luffy tries to put up a fight, but is easily defeated. In the end, Aokiji decides to spare Luffy because he doesn't find him to be a threat yet, and also as a thanks for taking down Crocodile back in Alabasta. That's the end of the interaction between the two, and Aokiji leaves the island. Aokiji's character introduction was one of the best in all of One Piece, because with him came a lot of world building for the series, and especially for the hierarchy of the Navy. This episode was the perfect way to introduce us to the admirals, and the Navy's true power. It tied a lot of things together, and it's a great setup for the arcs that come much later where the other admirals played a part. Thank you so much for watching if you made it this far. Let me know what other episodes you want me to analyze next, and I'll see you all in the next video. Bye.